What if the problem isn't you? What if you're in the wrong room? My suspicion? You're not broken and you don't need to be fixed. You've outgrown where you are. Let's get more space and freedom to redesign the life you deserve. Welcome to the Reinvention Room. I'm Allison Hare, podcast launch strategist for ambitious leaders, and we are rethinking everything we've been taught. Part pop culture, part real talk, and all smarter ways to live life on your own terms. What does it mean to be a good Christian? Ooh, this episode, this one is going to be a juicy one. I was actually a little bit nervous to record it, as I am with all ones that are going to be provocative and poke some bears. And this episode is either going to completely piss you off, and you can decide I'm a complete moron void of any center, or you're going to feel completely seen and heard and have endless conversations in your circles about it. And I'm wondering, have you noticed some of these cultural shifts out in the world? Like the oversized crosses you see that I am wearing if you're watching this on YouTube. I'm wearing this big old cross that I've had for a long time. I love it. But you notice that it's almost like a signal, right? The oversized crosses or that long hair is really, really back in a big way. And in fact, did you know that Melania Trump is the first lady ever to have hair longer than her shoulders? And so, of course, that is going to set off some trends there as well. And there are groups that are forming around shared identities that may seem a little hypocritical. And it feels like everyone is trying to anchor themselves to something because everything feels really uncertain right now. And I would say that if we're thinking of a word in 2025, let's say, I think uncertainty kind of encapsulates all of it from top to bottom. But at the same time, there is a bigger shift that is getting louder and louder. And I've done a lot of podcast episodes and topics around this, that Christian fundamentalism has gone from really kind of a fringe thing to totally mainstream. But now it's wrapped in politics. So we're going there. We keep pretending that the fight is political. But I wonder if the fight is about religious superiority. We talk about the separation of church and state, but like it's still a thing, but you can feel the threads kind of pulling loose. And now it's all blending together. Belief, identity, power, fear, and whatever people think will keep them on the right side of the moment. And meanwhile, most Americans are building their own version of faith from scraps, like a Cafeteria Christian. Have you ever heard that term? I would say that I am a Cafeteria Christian, or maybe you're astrology curious, or trusting instincts over anything institutionalized. People are kind of remixing spirituality. At the same time, fundamentalism is hard launching its own worldview through legislation, through school boards and TikTok pastors. There's so much that is happening right now that seemingly is permanent. And things that we thought were permanent are being undone right now too. And are we headed towards a state of religious dystopia? Today, you're going to walk away with a much clearer read of what's going on and why everything feels more charged. Why small choices like how you dress, what you post, who you say you voted for, suddenly signal entire belief systems. And by the end of this, you're going to see the spiritual landscape of America very differently. And I'll tell you right now, you're not going to walk away without an opinion. You're going to have a strong opinion listening to this. This is not going to be a neutralizing conversation. And I think it's important to kind of stir and have critical thought around some of the belief systems that we either have been indoctrinated to believe in. And if you don't think that, I think if you feel like you are immune to being indoctrinated, I'm sorry, but that is wrong. We all are. We all are subject to having our belief systems shaped and molded. And the reason why is because we are connected. We depend on each other. Before we get into it, I would love to know, like, who do you know that is deeply involved in their faith or fascinated by the intersection of religion and politics and culture? When those people have kind of popped up in your mind when I said that, will you shoot this episode to them? Because you're going to have some really interesting discussions once you do. What does it mean to be a real Christian? It's an interesting question. And when I think about me growing up, so I grew up as a Christian. We grew up in the Protestant faith. My father was raised as Catholic. I don't know that he was ever practicing, but he was born and raised in Lebanon. In Lebanon, they have two religions, either Muslim or Catholic, and my father was on the Catholic side. And my mother was raised Protestant, and so we went to church every single week. And my mom was involved in choir. We went to vacation Bible school. But I kind of feel like religion, like church was something you did. It was almost like I grew up in New Jersey where there was a large group of a Jewish population as well. And so often I went to school with a lot of Catholics and a lot of Jewish people. And like on Mondays, my Catholic friends would go to catechism and my Jewish friends would go to Hebrew school. I would go home and watch MTV. I feel like the church that we went to, which to me in my memories were a wonderful church, it was a non-denominational Protestant church, seemed very accepting. But we grew up in a neighborhood where there was a family across the street that was a really big, prominent family. They were what's known, or they called themselves born again Christians. And I don't know if that term born again is still being used. I don't know if it's called something else. And we'll talk about what it's changed to, because I feel like now people call it, I'm a believer. And I don't know if it's the same or different, but I have noticed that the term Christian is very different than it was when I was growing up. If somebody asked me, Allison, are you a Christian? I would say, yeah, I was raised Christian. No. I mean, are you a Christian? And I'd be like, what does that mean? Have you accepted Jesus as your Lord and Savior? I guess. You know what I mean? I haven't been questioned otherwise, like you're just kind of born in the faith and you go to church and that's what you do. And that we would go on the holidays, we go every Sunday. We were involved with Bible school and all that stuff. But I don't know that it was like a part of my identity. And we had these neighbors, like I said, that were born again Christians. They would host young life groups and a lot of people. They were just a very prominent family where I remember they never believed in Santa Claus. They would say, well, we're never going to lie to our kids. And I'd be like, guys are missing out. I didn't understand. But I always felt like my mother, I know this sounds weird. I feel like my mother was somebody that wanted to keep up with the Joneses. She wanted to be accepted. She wanted to feel like she belonged. And I always felt like she felt that she was not Christian enough for this family, that we were somehow not. And I don't know, that's just my sense of it. And I've also noticed when I think about people pleasing or fawning, even today, when somebody tells me they're a believer, all of a sudden I am incorporating Jesus into our dialogue. And it's almost like, on one hand, I could think of it as wanting to help that person understand that I want to learn, understand, accept, have no issues with. But on the other side, it can be like an accommodating one of like, yeah, let's talk about what you care about. It could be a generous thing, but it also can be, yeah, I'm part of the tribe too, but maybe not in the way that you are. And it almost feels like go along to get along. And so sometimes I would question myself of like, why am I talking? I don't normally talk about Jesus in every conversation. like somebody else who is considered a believer might. Do I believe in God? I sure do. And I believe I have a personal relationship with God. But I've been very, 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 very disappointed with what I have noticed, what I've experienced, and even just, I would consider myself a God and spiritual faith seeker. So at one point, I would say I'm like faith curious, and I really am. But I would say I am a faith seeker. Like I am seeking a relationship with God. I am seeking understanding. And I can talk to you about what that looked like for me. And when I think about my mom, who has always been raised in church, she always went to church as a child and as an adult. And it was important for her that we, or her kids, her 6 kids, believed in God and had a moral center. Like for her, it was kind of morality, faith, Jesus, going to church was almost, I don't know if it was checking the box, but it was just part of what you do to be part of a good society. It was a good moral compass. It was a good structure and framework to help you through life. And when my mother died a few years ago, I was actually really sad that when she was dying, when she would be in and out of the hospital, she died of lung cancer in 2021, and she was diagnosed in late 2020 with terminal cancer. She had struggled with chronic breathing issues for over a decade, and we knew it was terminal. We didn't know how much time, but she was in and out of hospitals. And people would ask her, "Judith, would you like a chaplain to come in?" And she'd say, "Sure." But it wasn't something she was seeking. And I always wondered, she never talked about seeing her mom and dad again and her brothers and sister who had passed on. She never talked about that, ever. And it made me sad. And when she was dying, she said she did not want a pastor or a minister had anything to do with the funeral. She didn't want a church funeral. She wanted a celebration of life. And she passed. And she passed in the most beautiful, beautiful way. Even though her last 6 months were painful, they were probably the most beautiful she had ever experienced, because for the first time, she allowed herself to feel love. But I found it really sad because I want to believe in God and a higher power. And I hate that she left this earth. And I don't really know, I can't speak for her. But she didn't opt in for any kind of institutionalized, and maybe she did believe in God, she just never talked about it. And I hate that that went away for her. Like, is her faith waning? The reason why I share that is because I want to give you a little bit of context of where am I coming from. I'm not coming from a place of so much judgment, although there probably will be a shitload of judgment, because I can't help but report what I see and observe some of the things that I've experienced. And from that, it is my own perspective that over the years, I've had a lot of people tell me, and people that I either love and respect, which has a lot more weight than somebody that I don't really love and respect, or somebody that is like a straight up conversion Bible beater type of person where it's not going to go anywhere with me, which we're going to talk, and we're going to break that down as well in our conversation today. But I have had so much experience. I have had people recently, when I talk about struggles, I'm like an open book. I have a podcast. It's public. I have a weekly blog that if you want to get on it, AllisonHare.com/email, where I send out a weekly email, which is super personal, kind of one-on-one, short, observational, usually irreverent and snarky as well, with some fun surprises in each one as well. But I am public about a lot, and public about just reinvention. This podcast is called Reinvention Room. And I love the intersection of becoming, of shedding what no longer fits. And as I would struggle or share about my struggle, people would say, Allison, what has really helped me? Jesus. Jesus has helped me. Okay, tell me more. Just having faith in something higher than you, somebody that loves you unconditionally. Okay. And so to me, it feels like a quest to find Jesus and find God and hear God and release the reins and trust and surrender. And I've met people that are incredible. I'm going to say it like they seem like incredible Christians, like they're devout, they're loving, they live the word, but I don't find them in judgment or trying to convert me. And I love and honor and respect those people. And there was a time, it was probably 2 years ago, where I really was struggling, where I'm like, I've been to so many churches, so many pastors where it just didn't fit, where I love the messages. We actually technically belong to a Catholic church. And the reason why we belong to it is because they married us in the Catholic Church. My husband is Catholic. It was really important for his parents, who were devout Catholics, to marry in a Catholic church. And we're like, sure, we'll do the pre-Cana and all of those stuff. And we became members of this church. And the reason why we did, because this particular church is very, very open to the gay community, to the queer community. They would participate in the Pride Parade, and really were open about feeding the homeless and having people integrate into the congregation. It wasn't like, here's what you do. Like they were talking the talk and living the walk, right? What is it? Walking the talk? Yes. They were walking the talk. And I really, really appreciated that. But the Catholic, all the rituals, I just don't get it. I don't understand. I don't ever know what I'm doing. And then there were other churches that some were like Hellfire and Brimstone, which are totally not mine. And then, like the mega church, I live in Atlanta. Buckhead Church is the mega church that's here. I am beyond obsessed with Andy Stanley, the pastor. I think he is one of the most gifted communicators in the entire world that I've ever seen. I have studied him and dissected how he puts sermons together in the way that he does it, and think it is masterful. And I had been going on and off to Buckhead Church for almost 2 decades now, and I'm in a no church place at this point. But at the same time, I would go, and some of the things that I learned from him and understanding the Bible and who Jesus was came from how he explained it to me. Somebody that is questioning, just an intelligent skeptic is probably a really good way to put it. I'm an intelligent skeptic. And so when I would go in and out, and many years ago, I was at a place where I had left a company, had no job. I was completely in debt and was really in this place where I was deeply, deeply searching and wanted to find a home, and was exploring. I was, had kind of recently discovered Buckhead Church and was just kind of enamored by the messaging and how I felt, and how, smarter I felt and more capable when I would go, and how practical the lessons were. And I met this guy and I was single, who was this really handsome guy that was really, really strong in his faith. And he met me at a bar, actually, and, said he was part of that church, and would talk to me about Christianity and his walk in faith. And he would teach me all these things. But what I was so almost seduced by, I don't want to say seduced, because I don't know if it was meant that way. But I don't know that I've ever really talked about this publicly. He he just kind of took me, he was so interested in me He was interested in my thoughts and where I was and what I was thinking about, and kind of we would take it apart. And I'm a person who deeply loves deep conversations. Like, I don't really swim in shallow at all. I don't love small talk. I can do it, I guess, but it's pretty draining. I love to go deep quick. And this guy knew it. Like, he just went there. And I so loved it. And we would just have these endless discussions for hours and hours and hours and hours. And I fell for this guy. I fell for him. And he was not having me, like, I think he was married to Jesus, honestly. Like, he just had all these rules. And I don't think I was as strong in my faith, a good Christian girl, than I was for him. And I was heartbroken. I was heartbroken because I felt like I don't know that it was conversion, but I felt like he was kind of trying to mold me, or had like a captive audience to, like, go deeper into the church. And as I started to kind of wake up and see, like, some of the things he would do just felt so painful in a walk with Jesus. And for instance, and this is going to sound kind of graphic, but he would talk about, how wet dreams for men were bad because, he would really struggle with, certainly could not masturbate because that would be in violation of church. You should be pure, all of those things. And he wouldn't do that. But when he would have a wet dream, which, are involuntary, then he would feel guilty. And I was like, this sounds painful. It seemed like an excruciating walk in his faith of, like, denying so many things, not just sexual, but like, and that's not what I meant. This is just an example, but he was denying so much that I'm like, this isn't squaring with me. And I started to kind of back out because the people in the church felt almost exclusionary. It felt like I would join a small group, and it felt like, here are the ways that I have been obedient this week, and it was almost like a judgment where it just didn't feel right. So I started to kind of back away. And it feels like I've done this again and again and again, where I'm like, let me dip my toe back in the water. Let me see if I can understand it in a different way. And I would go in and then be disappointed and come back out, and something wouldn't square. But I keep going back. And so a couple of years ago, Buckhead Church has this program, and it's, I forget what it's called, but it is like where you have a mentor. And so I actually asked to have a mentor that would walk with me for like 6 months. And we would meet every single Sunday. And we would talk about what's coming up, or this Bible verse, or whatever. And this woman was so amazing. Like, we had the deepest and most amazing conversations. And she was so lovely. Like, to me, she felt like such an amazing Christian because she wasn't trying to convert me. And maybe that is like the safety piece. She was just asking questions and not leading me, but like having meaningful discussions where I felt really heard and seen and loved anyway. It didn't feel like, well, you should have done it this way, or maybe we can look at it this way. It was just this meaningful, curious discussion where I love the concept of God being a mystery. And, I would question with her that she was somebody that was always brought up in faith, and never once had she ever questioned, is this true? And I love the concept of being so sure and being so absolute with your belief in God. I wish I could feel that way. And then I see the other side of, like, the mystery of asking questions, being able to ask questions. So it's a little bit of historical context for me of where I am, but let's go back to, like, what are you seeing out there? And I think, like, signals keep signaling. So let's talk about obvious things. And this is not religion, but this is going to be kind of a intersection of politics, religion, cultural changes. And there are obvious things like wearing a MAGA hat, like it's real clear. Or a Cybertruck feels like a giant tin can, ugly ass, oversized MAGA hat on wheels, and then like the coexist bumper stickers means something else, having a pride flag, or obviously a Pantsuit Nation t shirt. I have I have a T-shirt that says feminist, and I bought it because it goes with this suit. I have this beautiful pink suit, and it looks fantastic underneath it. Like the look of just a graphic tee with a suit over it, where it I don't know. I just think it's a cool look. And this feminist shirt, I've always worn it and never thought twice about it. I'm not trying to make a political statement. It just is. But now I don't know that I could wear it in mixed company. And so I went to a conference recently where I'm like, they were taking pictures and whatever. And I purposely did not pack the best thing that works with this particular suit, that feminist shirt, because I didn't want to make a political statement, because I knew there would be people that have different political views than me, and I wasn't trying to stir up anything. And I really love and deeply respect these people. I'm not trying to be an asshole. And so, like, the feminist shirt feels a little dangerous now. And I'm sure there are things like the signals that you have, like the oversized crosses. So you'll see it, the oversized crosses on Erica Kirk. You'll see it on Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary. And I think Megyn Kelly. Like I have got one on right now. And I don't know, like, yeah, I'll wear it. But I feel like if I wore it in mixed company, it would be a signal. Like I believe one way or the other, right? It feels, depending on what side you are, safe or unsafe. And that, I think, is what is weird, right? And there's the long trad wife hair. There was an article that came out recently in the New York Times about long hair. And what they're saying that it's signaling is, so two things. So on the practical side, many years ago, as people would get older, women would get older, they would cut their hair shorter and shorter because theoretically it would be easier to manage. Your hair, as it gets older, gets a little more brittle. Is harder to manage as it gets gray, it gets wiry, and it loses its texture, or becomes more textured, I should say, and wiry. And so people would just cut it. Now we have better styling products. So, you're able to have longer hair. There's extensions. But there's also a conservative movement where you see people like Melania Trump and people that have really long, Erica Kirk, really, really long hair. And it signals almost like the trad wife movement of a sign of femininity. It's almost like they call it kind of reverse feminism. Like, we are going to be as feminine as possible. We are going to reject any sense of like, pronouns or gender fluidity, or non-binary. Like we're going to have long hair. We're going to be as feminine as possible. And so it's an interesting commentary on what's going on out there. And also, like, there's a patchwork spirituality, which I think is so fascinating of, and I'll kind of go into the stats, and really it feels like a belonging crisis. This feels like a belonging crisis that is kind of hiding under lifestyle choices. America right now, like we talked about the word uncertainty, America is spiritually unsettled. It feels like it's grasping and recomposing itself in real time. We are trying to find our centers. And what are these signals pointing to? Is it a personal expression, or are we watching belief systems kind of reorganize themselves before our very eyes? And so let me tell you so I started doing some deep research on this. And I asked questions on my research. So there is a function, and if you don't know this, but ChatGPT has a function of doing deep research. So I asked, what is the difference between thinking hard? Like you can tell ChatGPT, think hard about this, and it'll search for deeper things. Deep research is where it will take multiple sources and compare it. So it takes sometimes it can take 10, 15 minutes to put together some of the summations of cross-checking references and making sure that it's accurate and what is going to be the most accurate of all of these multiple sources. So this is not let me just look at my, my vacuum and figure out, or my echo chamber and figure out what that looks like. So I asked ChatGPT to do some deep research. So I asked, are people, going more towards Christianity? It feels like there is more people going to spirituality, or are a smaller portion of it becoming more vocal? It's hard to say. Are people leaving the church? Are they going back to church? I asked questions about Doug Wilson, who is a big prominent figure in the Christian fundamentalist one. To me, I feel like he's incredibly problematic, and it feels very Handmaid's Tale to me. And I think we are seeing this in so many ways. The Handmaid's Tale of even Roe v. Wade and rights being taken away from women, and men kind of running the country as the patriarchs of our society, and going backwards, and even from degrees and nursing and not being considered a professional degree, and taking away money and opportunity for people to get educated, especially for women. So it's an interesting time, and I asked, are people moving towards church or religion or faith after Charlie Kirk's death? And I don't know that there's enough data because it was only September 10th. Right now I'm recording this, it's November, the end of November. I don't know that there's enough data to figure that out, but there are data on, more interest in Turning Point USA, TPUSA. So what the numbers say is that Christianity has dropped from 78% to 62% in the past 15 years. So there has been a pretty significant drop. And there's something called nuns, N-O-N-E-S, N-O-N-E, nuns. Nuns are people that don't believe in anything. They don't believe in God. They don't believe in they're not subscribing to any religion. Nuns rise to 29%, especially among Gen Z. So these are younger, early 20s kind of thing. It is rising. Church membership collapses below 50% for the first time in U.S. history. And weekly attendance is now at 21%. And Gen Z is saying that they are not religious, but absolutely spiritual. And so the spiritual but not religious surges, but there are other data sources that show that Gen Z is also going back to church. And the reason why they are seeking certainty. So Gen X, which is what I am, are going to church less and less and less and less. I would say more disillusioned, where Gen Z, early 20s kind of thing, is looking for certainty. They're looking for structure. They're looking for order. And so I think they're more likely to explore. So we are seeing rises in this. But I think overall, I was actually surprised that there was so much of a decline, because I feel like there is some resurgence that is going back there, especially with younger people. And it really made me wonder, are people ditching belief, or not ditching really belief, but they're ditching institutions? Are they rejecting institutions? So I think of it as two different rising worlds, and essentially two different Americas. One are the remixers, right? These are the Cafeteria Christians. These are people that are looking at astrology and manifestation as modern coping systems. And I know for me, I have struggled in the past with certain things. And I remember a specific time where I was struggling with body dysmorphia and disordered eating and orthorexia, pretty hardcore. And I went to everything I could to help me. And, when I was going kind of it feels like a downward spiral, but I was going through that. And it was after my daughter was born. And I was in a spiral, and I would go and I could feel myself going crazy. I don't know if you've ever felt that. I've never felt that way before or really sometimes recently. And I think part of that might be perimenopause. I'm maybe I'll do an episode on that after I kind of get on the other side of what is going on there, because I don't really know. But at that time I felt like I was going crazy. And I would hire anybody I could. I would go to church. I would go to a therapist. I would go to nutritionists. I would hire coaches, personal trainers. I would go to, psychotherapists, and nothing was helping. Nothing was helping. And then I had a tarot reading. And in that tarot reading, one tarot reading literally reversed all of the disordered eating in one session. Reversed it. And what I found is that whenever I get through the traditional methods, I go to church, I do all the right things. And when I can't find answers, the metaphysical world always comes through. Isn't that crazy? And I think about, I'm looking at my desk, and I know a lot of women have this if you're watching this on YouTube. I've got crystals, and I'm surrounded. A lot of high-performing women are surrounded by crystals. They have a tarot reading or a Reiki healer or somebody on their speed dial, along with the other sources as well. Does it work? I don't know, but it sure makes me feel good. And so that astrology and manifestation, people really, really look into that. Now we see that there is increasing in popularity is human design, which is like a cross-section of astrology and science, and a remarkably accurate prediction of like a personality test. Like I'm in a program right now with Nicole Lano, who specializes in human design for entrepreneurs, of how does your body process, information, how do you make decisions that work for you. And so understanding that has been really interesting. And I think this kind of like pick your own belief approach, this, cafeteria kind of style thing is, could it be fueled by burnout and distrust? So much distrust. And the desire for autonomy. And I think about me, and probably you are most likely a high-performing woman, or know some, that there is a sense of, again, if things are uncertain and it feels like chaos, what is it that you can control? And waiting for Jesus to come back and walk the earth again feels like it's going to be waiting. And it kind of brings me to thought-terminating clichés. Do you know what thought-terminating clichés are? These are kind of the clichés that we say all the time, or very often say all the time, that actually deter you from any critical thought. That's why they're called thought-terminating clichés. And they almost discount your ability to question anything. And what those thought-terminating clichés are, I'll give you some examples. Like if you think about common religious thought-terminating clichés include like, God works in mysterious ways. It's all part of God's plan. You just need more faith and doubt your doubts. Doubt your doubts. Only God can judge. The devil is making you think that. Devil's got you. These phrases like discourage critical thought by implying the questioning is a failure of faith. And this, I think, can be dangerous because I would imagine that if God is a God of mystery, and, I don't know how many people have unwavering faith and belief, and understanding why do we suffer in this world? I think the other challenge with it can be very dismissive of people's actual feelings, which is why I don't really like thought-terminating clichés like, it is what it is, just have faith, praying for you. God will provide. Everything happens for a reason. Everything happens for a reason. And it is what it is are probably the biggest thought-terminating clichés that drive me nuts. Like I maybe there is some truth to some of it, but it I don't know. It just feels, it feels like it's not good for like discourse or hearing each other. It feels like shutting down actual human emotions that if they had the opportunity to kind of cycle out, then you could at least process it instead of holding it all in. So the spiritual identity piece of this feels like it's not really on terra firma right now. And so those are like the remixers. And then you have the revivalists. And these are people where fundamentalism becomes mainstream and not fringe. And I think that part of like, of like essentially of removing the separation of church and state, which is kind of in our Constitution, but saying this should be a Christian nation. Like, we're going to put Bibles, we're going to say the Pledge of Allegiance in schools. We're going to shove this down whoever's throat because there will not be any imbalance of it. The giant crosses, purity aesthetics, the trad wife resurgence. I did a whole episode on trad wives. It is one of my favorite and one of the top downloaded episodes as well, where the trad wife, you're wondering, what the hell is a trad wife? It stands for traditional wife. And so it is the concept of women opting out of the workforce to purposely go home and be in service to your husband and to your kids, and what that can present like. And there's a whole world of it on social media. If you look up Ballerina Farm is a great one to follow, where you're like making everything from scratch and your kids say, I'm hungry for s'mores. And you're like, all right, let's make the marshmallows from scratch and the graham crackers. And it takes a couple of days to have your s'mores. But you're doing it all from scratch. You're raising your kids at home. You're homeschooling your kids. Again, this is like, generally speaking, there is a concept of that where essentially you're kind of opting out of society other than your church. There's usually a religious element to it to kind of go back and like hole up. But husband goes out and works, mom, and what the argument for a trad wife is, I've got the education. Charlie Kirk has said, I think women should go get their MRS degree, and not work. And unfortunately now his wife is working and running a company, which I have my own thoughts on that. Erica Kirk is somebody that I'm puzzled by that I actually think she's being terribly manipulated right now for political purposes, because I imagine, I don't care that she's wearing leather pants or makeup. Who cares, you know? That part doesn't, I don't know that she's being performative. I don't know. And I know that's been the critique, but I wonder with Erica Kirk of immediately being thrust into this role of being the CEO of Turning Point USA. I can't imagine that if your husband died a month ago, 2 months ago, that you have any opportunity to be of sound mind, to make any decisions or know how you feel. People cope in different ways. So I may be a little bit of an Erica Kirk sympathizer when it comes to the state that she's in right now. And I feel like the political party and the Republican political party and JD Vance, and I literally would not be surprised if Erica Kirk gets married to JD Vance, that he leaves his wife. And I really would not be surprised at all. And I think there might be something there. But I also know that I don't think there's any way anybody could be in their right mind to make any kind of big decisions at all. And maybe she's fueled by the Spirit of God and her, late husband, all of that. But there's just no way that she isn't being manipulated. It's just crazy what's going on. I also think, when you think about the revivalists, I have questions over Satan, belief in demons and Satan and spiritual warfare. And maybe there are, I'm all over the place, aren't I? Maybe there are some special, maybe there are some denominations that kind of believe in this more, but they're showing the statistics believe that more and more people don't really believe in Satan. They don't believe in the enemy. They don't believe in the spiritual warfare. It is like completely plummeted. And for me, I don't even know. I don't know that I feel completely turned off. It's actually a trigger for me when people talk about the enemy is out to get you, and even just that, that spiritual warfare that they're all trying to get you. And there is like a fear mongering that happens where it feels almost like an abusive boyfriend, like a narcissistic abusive boyfriend that is telling you the spirit, they're all out to get you. They're all out to get you. You better straighten up. It's the demons. It's the Satan, and that is very high in conservative groups. And I even think there's something called positive intelligence, PI. It's like this concept of a way of thinking. I don't know if it's emotional intelligence, but it's called positive intelligence. It's like a kind of a way of doing life. There's like a whole curriculum around it. There was a guy, I forget his name, who runs it, and a lot of people can get certified in it. I went through the program, but I was actually completely repelled by it because they would talk about, they would call it the saboteurs. And that is like when, in your thinking, and you might call it stinking thinking, but like when you have critical thoughts, they would label it as the saboteurs, meaning they're trying to get in, but you are bright light and it almost is like, I think it's kind of shutting off parts of yourself that are really real. And so I think about toxic positivity of all of that. But I also feel like emotions that we consider negative, anger, rage, sadness, discomfort, we have a really tough time with it and we label it wrong and bad and it shouldn't be here. And I wonder, how much better off would we be if we allowed ourselves to feel it, and not to feel it to feel worse or to punish ourselves, but to let it process through. It's kind of like the art of meditation, where you talk about meditation, where they say, if you have any thoughts that come in, just let them pass by like a cloud in the sky. That kind of feels like when I get into modes or moods where I'm just pissy, I'm judgy, I'm in a bad mood, which happens more and more often, which fucking sucks. And I think of it as like perimenopause as well. But I don't love it. But I also don't think I'm being infiltrated by demons, And I don't think spiritual warfare, like the enemy is out to get me, or that, the devil is trying to um, get in me. And I say this outside of mental health, of like things that are diagnosed on the DSM. I am not qualified to talk about that. I'm just saying, for people who are not diagnosed with schizophrenia or something that where that may appear like that. I'm not trying to take away from that, but I don't get it. I don't get the spiritual warfare and feel really triggered when people talk about the enemy is coming to get you, the enemy that is because I feel like, what if we had more control? What if we could embrace all those parts? It's like, if you're familiar with internal family systems, they refer to the parts of your life and the parts of what you do and the moments in your life as parts. And so there's a book called No Bad Parts. And what if that was true? Like, if you're visiting the anxious version of yourself, or the sad version of yourself, or the rage version of yourself, but not in a place of judgment, or just let me just wallpaper over it, and deny the demons kind of thing. So I don't know. And like, conservative Christianity is just merging tighter and tighter with political identity. So if this is the case, if we have two Americas, how do you maintain like a shared society where the spiritual frameworks aren't just different, they're incompatible? And the question is, are they incompatible? I want to talk about some stats I think are really insane. And it's the merging of belief and power, because there is a thing called power. Obviously, the separation of church and state are fraying. So white evangelicals now identify 85% of white evangelicals are aligned with the GOP. No shit. That makes sense. Christian nationalism. 30% of the country is sympathetic to Christian nationals. And belief-driven politics are what are shaping school boards, book bans, gender policies. And by the way, this is not like all of a sudden it's happening. This actually started in the 1980s. This has been happening for such a long time. And even I remember one of my very, very first jobs, I was working for a lawyer. She was a family lawyer in New Jersey. And she was a president of of her chapter of Right to Life, so a pro-life group. I have never been pro-life a day in my life. I have always been pro-choice. I never understood it. I feel incredibly angry and have zero interest in even understanding how people cannot believe pro-choice. I thought about, like, should I have somebody on my show? And I thought, no, this is not what I want to platform at all. And I don't even have openness and understanding. But I remember I was like a secretary for this lawyer, and I would do a lot of like making photocopies and helping her with, like documents and stuff around pro-life. And, back then I didn't know anything. I just thought it was some fringe thing, but it's been going on since the 80s. And there has always been. And as I have dug deeper and deeper, and I did a recent interview with Tia Levings, who is an ex-Christian fundamentalist and does this brilliant job kind of translating what's going on in politics with Christian fundamentalism, that it is not fringe. It is mainstream, but it has been there, and it has been working insidiously and patiently for decades and decades and decades. This is not, where did this come from? And this is real. And a lot of that does happen locally. It starts in the school boards. It starts with, these book bans and trying to, I think the oppression is the challenge here of like the oppression of the book bans or gender policies, like I'll go to visit my dad, and my dad is he is in a memory care facility. And so I'll go, and sometimes Fox News will be on, and every single time, no matter what, like my news feed is completely different. And all they're talking about at Fox News is the illegals and the trans people and how bad it is. And, almost never, are we talking about trans people? Like, I don't, I'm very, 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 very an ally for the queer community of all types, and very sympathetic. And I've had people on this show, talking about their experience. And I just can't get over the gender policies that people are still talking about, stuff that generally is not going to impact you. It's less than 1% of the population, but it becomes weaponized for it, And we pretend these fights are politics, but I can't tell if politics are weaponizing religion or religion is weaponizing politics. And, if someone says, I don't do politics, honey, politics is doing you. It's doing us all, right? Like, politics is central to everything we are, what we believe, what we care about, who we care about. And so I think for me, like in Trump's first term, it was so hard. It was so hard. My mom, like most people's moms, was hardcore Trumpy, and she would post the most ridiculous things on Facebook where it's like, oh my God, I can't believe that's what she believes, And it was hard. It was hard at family events, it was hard at in friend groups where nothing felt safe anymore. Everyone felt like they were just attacking, like, how can you believe this? And, the name calling and all of this. Now I feel like, at least my own experience, it's different. It feels more nuanced. And I am really close with people that did not vote the way that I voted. And I don't fault them for voting the way that they voted because of the information they had. Same with the information that I had. We kind of go from like human first, right? Humans first. But also, I'm not arguing with them and trying to go toe to toe on policies and whatever, because my goal is not to convince them that I'm right or vice versa. We care about the human. And so I'm much more in mixed company than I was the first time, where everything felt so dangerous. And now I'm trying to be more human first, and the moment there is dehumanization, like libtards and radical whatever, like I'm out, I'm out. I just don't think it's helpful at all. I think it's helpful to win elections. I think it's helpful to get people riled up, but I don't think it's helpful in terms of interpersonal people that I really care about and really love and respect. And again, we're all biased. Do I know if all the information that I get is accurate? Who the fuck knows? I don't know. I try the best that I can, and there are sources that I trust, just like you might be listening. And it's crazy. You and I can believe the same exact things and have a totally different algorithm and feed as well, which is what makes this so interesting. So I think we need to be kinder and more forgiving on people that may believe differently, unless you're dehumanizing, unless you are lumping people in groups that you are, saying are dumbasses or sheeple and blindly following, because I don't think that's the case at all. I think we are looking for a center. We're looking for a moral center and a truth. We're looking for certainty when the way the administration and Trump has designed this is to divide us. It is through chaos, and that is how Trump thrives. I don't know how well it's going to end for him at this moment. Who knows? But he's like a fucking cockroach. He just keeps coming back again and again and again. I don't know how he gets away with what he gets away with. And I just, oh, it is disheartening. It is disheartening. And when you think about, and I will trash Trump all day long, but I'm not trashing groups of people. I think Trump is a complete and total piece of fucking shit. And oh, man, I never. Anyway, I think people want more belonging than more than they want belief in some cases. And so I've done a couple episodes. I've done two particular previous episodes. I can link them in the show notes. One of them is as on how minds change with David McRaney, who is a science journalist and wrote a whole book on, why people's minds change or not, and the belief and identities. And another one I did with Dr. Jay Van Bavel, regarding on social identities, which is so fascinating. And really what the research tells us is that people are far more likely to opt for actual death than they are on social death. And, like we saw that with kind of the anti-vax movement. There were a lot of people that literally died of COVID and were asked, had you have known, would you have gotten the vaccine? They're like, fuck no, hell no, nope, they're not giving me the jab. So it's interesting about the social identity and the belonging and, people anchor to groups. And I think that is why cults, if you are new to me, I am somebody that freaking loves talking about cults all day long. I could talk about it forever. And because I think it is the intersection of what makes us human, on belonging, on of wanting to feel seen and heard and feeling like we matter and acknowledged, and fear. So there has been a rise in cults. There's been a rise in, and again, like everyday cults, like that could look like Soul Cycle, can be culty, or Pentagon. What am I thinking? Peloton, not Pentagon. Trader Joe's can be one as well. And so the social belonging is kind of replacing a spiritual conviction in a lot of ways of, that I think is why Joe Rogan kind of taking, he's still the number one podcaster in the world, and, heavily skews more towards male and especially disgruntled males. But he has been kind of flip-flopping a little bit of like, he voted for Trump and advocated for him. And now he's like, wait, this is kind of bullshit with the immigration stuff, that you're literally separating families, And again, it is that because Joe Rogan is somebody that is very trusted in certain circles, not all circles, but in a lot of circles that matter, when it comes to population. When it comes from him, you're far more likely to listen to it than somebody that didn't vote that the way you did and is trying to convince you otherwise. And so when you think about leadership in patriarchal society, and what does it mean when somebody says, this is what I believe in, your trusted sources. If everyone has a mic, how do you know who to trust? And so I think it is way more important, to kind of trust and check the sources. Obviously, when you're thinking about news sources, Reuters, AP is going to be politically the most in the middle. Obviously, Fox News is going to be way left, way right. MSNBC or MS Now is going to be way left. CNN is going to lean left. New York Times is going to lean left. Washington Post, I can go on and on. Wall Street Journal is, leaning more right and more towards financially conservative. There's so many different sources of what does that look like. But what we're also seeing is the rise of new media. And the new media is podcasts, YouTube, TikTok. And, you got to be careful of people that have massive platforms. How do you know where their sources are? They can be very convicting. They can be very convicting. And it's easy to get seduced. And, half the time I have to wonder, I don't agree at all with RFK. I think he is also a complete piece of shit and is, bringing disease back when he's talking about making America healthy again. And, I have a lot of friends, I live in Atlanta, that work for the CDC. And I would ask, are there people that work for the CDC that get it and have a different perspective? And they're like, yeah, I mean, not a lot, but there are some. And so is there another story here? What does it look like to understand? I think the identity formation, I think where we have to watch ourselves is it formed, the identity formation formed by fear, by uncertainty, and the search for structure? And a really loud, confident voice can really take you down a different path and start to make sense where it wouldn't before. And there is a rise of spiritual performances, online and offline, to signal what is home base for you. So I wonder, is this really about God? Or is it about people who think it will keep them safe? And that's what I think this is all about now, of safety and survival. And that is, safety and survival is belonging. We can't do this on our own. All of the studies show that we are not wired to be a lone wolf. We are not wired to be rolling solo. And even there are studies coming out now of people like me. I'm a solopreneur. I'm a solo entrepreneur. I work alone, but I purposely get out into groups because I don't want to always be alone. I kind of miss being in an office talking to people and being among people. And what they find is that people that are running solo businesses, they could be successful as all get out, but in many cases, they may be profoundly sad. And this is anecdotal, right? I don't have data to back this up, but they are starting to see some showing on this around, we need each other. We need to belong somewhere. And so you got to wonder, there is a dissonance between inherited faith and adult reality. And we are now in this place where maybe you've been indoctrinated into a belief system where you're questioning it or not. Is it safe to question your beliefs? I think that, is telltale sign number one. Are you in a cult? Can you question your beliefs? Can you question your leaders or the people that you look up to? Can you question it? It can go the same for your boss. Can you push back in a corporation or in a group, in a church, in a spiritual leader, or a group that you might belong to? And so it kind of forces us to be really confused and learning to build meaning in a new way. And I think we're in this place where these structures and these patterns are being torn down and rebuilt in front of our very eyes. Is it the right way? I don't know, but I feel like that uncertainty, that uncertainty is what's giving us so much anxiety and loneliness. And we're seeing, the burnout. It's so funny because I left my corporate job 3.5 years ago. And when I left and I started a business pretty shortly after I left, of wanting to help women like me, working professional mothers, avoid burnout, reconnect with themselves. And I thought I was a snowflake, you know? I thought I was really unique of like, man, it's so hard for me. And now you look around, everybody is fucking burned out. Everybody's tired. Everything's so expensive. Travel is hard. It's more costly. The political chaos, your job certainty. It's hard. More people are laid off. This doesn't feel like a better America. It doesn't feel like a safer. Nobody knows who to trust. So it's more important to find the communities that do feel safe or start your own or rebuild. And part of that is why I have this podcast, is that this podcast is not a political podcast, believe it or not. But it started out a political, born of frustration of the political climate and division, and knowing that I wanted to have a place where I could open the door to truth. And what does it look like to have meaningful conversations that move the ball forward, that look at things potentially a new way, and find insights that could help people feel empowered to reinvent themselves, and reinvent the culture. And so I came up with a tagline even for this podcast, which, believe it or not, has been such a tremendous effort to find the right one. But it is like a smart, irreverent look at how culture shapes us and how we shape it right back through the lens of personal reinvention. And that really is what it is of what I do and why I'm a podcast strategist. And so this is what I do. I help people find their voice and create podcasts built around their thought leadership that is aligned with their brand. Often it is personal brands like coaches, consultants, speakers, authors are kind of my sweet spot of like, how do you integrate all of that? So if you're interested, you can schedule a free call with me. Shameless plug, AllisonHair.com/free call. And we can talk about yours. But I wanted to kind of wrap this up in a little bow. And I wonder if this dystopia, are we in a religious dystopia? It can be the moment before collapse. And is that collapse necessary for a breakthrough and rebuild? Is it inevitable? I don't really know the answers to it, but I'd be so curious what your thoughts of what you see out there, and to be able to see the signs around you in fashion, in language, in friend groups. And it's even like the language, and I'll use this because I know this, is like, Fox News will call immigrants illegals, illegal aliens. Well, we'll call them immigrants. And, like the weaponization of words are really powerful. The radical left, the radical anything. It's tough. It's tough because that wins elections. It wins people's minds. The nicknames, there is a power to the nicknames, but that has been Trump's weaponization as the nicknames because it makes it really easy. Sleepy Joe or Crooked Hillary, or what did he call Marco Rubio? Little Marco or something. All of those things, or Crooked Cruz or whatever, all of those things make it really easy to compartmentalize and stereotype somebody and also assign a value of good or bad. Of what does it look like? And if it's bad, I just think we're in a dangerous moment right now where we truly need each other. We truly need, if it's faith, I think back to my own journey. I I'm on this relentless path to understand. Again, I told you, I believe in God. I believe in having a personal relationship with God. I believe God is watching me and caring for me, and I don't know all the details. I don't know, like, do I believe in heaven? Yeah, I do. I sure hope so. Do I believe in hell? I don't know. I don't really. You know, is it sound? Do I know if I'm right or not? I have no fucking clue. I really don't. And I even remember when my mother-in-law died. And my husband is somebody that was, raised Catholic, but not really practicing. He's kind of more of like God and prayer doesn't really occur to him. I would say he's kind of a science guy, but he's not like, I don't believe in God. That's not it at all. But if shit goes wrong, he's not on his knees praying. Like he's just trying to figure it out. And I remember leaning over at the funeral of my mother-in-law and asking him, Chris, do you believe that your mother is with your brother who also passed away and sister who also passed away before? He's like, man, I sure hope so. And I wish again that we absolutely knew. And maybe I don't know, like, is it the obedience aspect of like believing, faith is believing when the evidence is not there? Um, I don't know. I'm searching for it. But man, I've been disappointed. I've been disappointed by hypocritical people calling themselves Christians and judging. I remember I was on a sales call and I was working for a company. And this person is somebody that took this call because the founders of this company are very faith forward. Faith forward, meaning it wasn't necessarily a faith-based company, but they were like very open about their love for Jesus and being believers. And so they would attract a lot of people that were also believers. But, doing that kind of work and experiencing that, obviously there is going to be a spectrum of where somebody falls. And there was this older guy that got on a call with me and he was real cagey at first. And he's like, hey, like before anything was happening, and he's squirming in his seat and kind of a jerk. And, like he did an application. And his application was that he was building a personal brand and he wanted to bring men back to Jesus. He wanted to bring men back to the Word of God and spiritual center. Okay, fine. And he was real cagey with me. And he said, hey, I need to ask you something before we get started. I was like, sure, what is this? He's like, do you get commission? And I was like, excuse me? He's like, if I sign up, do you get a commission? And I was like, yeah, but why does that matter? And he's like, I thought so. And I'm like, ugh. And I was like, well, what is it that you need? What's going on? And he said, I almost canceled this call with you. It's like, okay, why? And he said, because I saw your picture and you look really professional now, but I saw your picture and you were wearing something I didn't think was very professional. And I was wearing like a sequined top, like a camisole, maybe my shoulders were showing. It was like a headshot. And he's like, I thought that the owners of this company were believers, were faith-based, were good Christians. And then I see you as a honeypot, which, hey, I was like, hell yeah, still got it, honeypot. I was and I wasn't. I was horrified. And he's like, you are just there to like get people in and look that way. And I'm like, holy fuck. What the fuck? And I felt so caught flat-footed. And I was so pissed. And I talked him off the ledge. And he's like, I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry. I'm sorry. You're professional. And what I hated about it is that he could tell me how he felt about it, but I couldn't tell him what I thought. I was representing a company that, you know, maybe believes something that I don't know that I believe in the same way. I don't have the same understanding that they have. And I respect and love and honor the people, like there was no judgment at all. But you'd reach some people, and I was so pissed. I was so pissed. And of course, he had $0 to invest in anything with his money, with his business anyway. And never ended up doing it. And there would be like automated messages that would go out, and he would respond back to those automated messages that were from me. And he would say, "Can you please make sure, I love these messages. I love everything that you're doing. I don't want to talk to Allison." Which is like, and so there would be instances like this that would happen again and again and again, where there are little infractions or just judgment that just pulls me away from the dogmatic, institutionalized institution of religion, or any particular religion. And it makes me very sad. It makes me very sad, the hypocrisy, so much of like, how are you going to bring men to, like when he probably is thinking that, like he's probably the guy that is going to, yell at his daughter for having her shoulders exposed, or her skirt is too short, because they're called eye traps. And, in that world, when you're not completely covered as a female. And I just, like, you do you, if that's your thing. Like, I really have no problems if that's how you want to conduct yourself. But the judgment on me, and it's just happened again and again and again, where, I've had Dennis Dorner, Father Dennis Dorner, on my podcast a few times. So he's a young Catholic priest. And I remember talking to him after we had recorded, and I'm like, "Father Dennis, I just don't understand why I want so badly to have a relationship with God, to go to church where I feel at home, not like love bombed, and feel like so overwhelmed where it becomes culty, and not like my presence doesn't matter, because at the mega church, they don't know if I'm there or not, like it doesn't matter." And I often felt like I didn't belong, and didn't belong in circles that I would try. And he leaned over to me and said, "Allison, why are you letting assholes get in the way of your relationship with God?" And I never forgot it. I never forgot it. And so I'll keep pursuing it. I think, like there's nothing wrong with having permission to reevaluate your upbringing, your faith, your doubt, or curiosity without shame. And yeah, I wish I was more settled in this. It's probably going to be a lifelong quest to figure out what the truth is for me. And, like there's no neutral listening to this episode. And this episode is not designed to tell you what to believe, but identifying what's happening around us, to have an intelligent look of understanding the signals of belonging, fear, of uncertainty, of love, of wanting connection, wanting to be with each other, and identifying, are we in a religious dystopia? But like not sleepwalking through it. Maybe this tension is something that is the start of something new that we haven't named yet. So, my goodness, where do we go from here? I don't know. I'm curious to get your thoughts. I mean, I'm an hour and a half into this episode. And I purposely didn't cut it off for time and to be tight and short because it isn't neat and tidy. And I feel like this particular experience is something I've wanted to talk about for a long, long time and give thought to what does it look like? What does it look like to be human first and maybe belief and identity second? And find your people, but wondering, do your people all look like you? Do they all think like you? Do they all sound like you? And maybe it's time to diversify and understand each other a little better. But when it comes to religion, I don't know. I'd be curious to know your thoughts. So with that, I'm going to close up shop here. I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for your ears. I'm grateful for your thoughts. I wonder if this provoked you. Do you feel pissed? Do you feel maybe you shut this off a long time ago? I don't know. Do you feel like, wow, I feel the same way? And I would imagine we probably all feel a similar way. But I would love for you to message me. You can DM me on Instagram. Everything is in the show notes. Or sign up for my email list at AllisonHare.com/email. And then we can go one-on-one. Or if you are wanting to have your own place, your own platform to share your ideas, to meet people of your dreams, to grow your business, grow your brand, and a podcast becomes a centralizing force for good and for change and for connection, and you want some help with that, I would love to talk to you more about your idea. And you can schedule a free call with me at AllisonHare.com/free call. And if it makes sense and I have the opportunity to help and support you in your next steps, let's do it. And if it doesn't, I'm going to point you in the right direction. For me, my role in those is really to help you on to the next step, whether it is with me or not. That part doesn't matter as much. I just want to understand where you are. So with that, thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next time. If you liked today's episode, there are several ways to support the show. I produce this show myself, so it helps me continue to make it. First, please rate and review the show on the platform where you listen, and consider sharing this episode with a friend or five. That's how it grows, by sharing these ideas. Second, please sign up for my email where I send out a short personal note to you every week, and always with a sprinkle of snark and some best finds. You can sign up at AllisonHare.com/email. As always, thanks for listening and hanging out with me in the Reinvention Room.